Hello, brains. We did it. We have 1 million subscribers. There's 1 million of us. It's like an ADHD army that I've been building and don't know exactly what we're going to use it for. And eventually we'll get organized enough to know what we're trying to accomplish. But hi. I wanted to do something special for 1 million subscribers, but it actually happened a little bit faster than I was expecting. And so we just decided to do an AMA, an Ask Me Anything. I've been doing this for 6 years now. Yeah, 6. Oh yeah, 6 years. And I've learned a lot about ADHD. I've learned a lot about myself. I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot about this community, and I just wanted to open it up to ask me things. Hello. Oh my gosh, the comments. Yeah, we have slow mode on so that hopefully more people can talk and I can actually read the comments. When did it hit 1 million? It hit 1 million December 23rd, which is also the day I got keys to my new townhome. I decided I like it in Seattle. I'm going to stay here, and I needed some stability, so I put an offer in on a townhome, and it was accepted. So I got keys and I got 1 million subscribers on the same day. It was really, really cool. Yeah, 6 years, I think. 2016, yes, 6 years. So yeah, obviously it's an AMA. The point is to ask me questions, to ask me anything. I am going to miss things while I'm answering questions in the comments, so that I don't miss it, and so you guys don't have to repeat your question a bunch of times. The moderators are actually going to pull questions from the chat as they see them, and I will then answer them as quickly as I can and as many as I can. But yeah, you don't have to spam your questions. If it's been like 10 minutes and it hasn't been answered yet, you might want to throw it in there in case the mods missed it. But for the most part, they're capturing everything. I already see a lot of questions coming in, which is cool. Yeah, it was a really cool Christmas. On that note, if any of you are watching that are my friends or family and you didn't get a Christmas present, that's why. I was kind of distracted. I kind of skipped Christmas this year. I was like, you know what, I'm moving, and I've got a lot going on with the channel and stuff like that. I'm just like, I'm just not gonna do Christmas except for a Secret Santa, which was hilarious because there's a bunch of ADHD advocates that decided to do a Secret Santa, and I think we all sent our gifts at different times and maybe forgot to actually say that this was what it was, but it was a Secret Santa, and we didn't have like a day planned for us to open all of our presents. And so I got Danny Donovan, and I checked in with her, and she was like, yeah, I don't know if anybody actually did the Secret Santa. We all have ADHD. And she told me that she hadn't gotten anything. And I was like, really? You didn't get a present? And she was like, no. And I was like, I sent you one. They should have sent it to you. It's this kind of pan. It's the always pan. I forget what it's called. It's a special pan. It's like the pan that's all over Instagram and stuff, where you can do all kinds of things in just one pan. You can make eggs and boil water, and you just need one pan. And so I sent it to her, and she's like, oh my God, I had considered ordering that myself, and I thought that I just did and forgot. So she'd been using the present I sent her for like 2 weeks, and just hadn't hadn't realized that it was actually the Secret Santa gift. So that was basically my Christmas. All right. Oh, thank you. Yeah, for those of you donating to the channel, you have no idea how much that means. We're growing and we're taking some risks this year. I'm actually, well, I'll talk about it in a little bit, but yeah, donations are extra helpful right now because we're trying to do some really cool things this year. New hair color. It's my natural hair color. Oh, wait, right. Questions from the question doc. Okay. So let me go over the question doc. Let's see. What does it feel like to know you've reached at least 1 million people? That's so exciting. Yeah. When I started this channel, I really hoped that nobody would see it. I wanted to help people in case it was useful for them, but I also didn't want like anybody to see it who didn't need it, who like actually knew what they were talking about, because I had a whole lot of imposter syndrome. I don't have a background in, I don't have a degree in anything, actually. I dropped out of community college, and I was learning about ADHD for myself, and I was putting what I learned on the internet, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And so the fact that that at least 1 million people have seen the channel, I mean, and more, right? Because not everybody who watches a video subscribes. It's it's really cool. It's really cool. I think I'm finally starting to get over my imposter syndrome and accepting that like maybe this is useful and like maybe it's okay that I'm doing this and it seems to be helping a lot of people. It's exciting and it feels like 1 million is a really good like, oh, we can take ourselves seriously now. Like we're successful. And for the first few years that I was doing the channel, I just kept telling myself, like, you're just going to fail. You're going to give up on this. Like, you give up on everything. You're never going to do this. Why are you doing this? Who's letting, and like the last couple of years, like, who lets me do this? Like, why did anybody decide that I should be, you know, on YouTube or like be a CEO of a company now? Because now we have a team. And like, I just felt like everything, I was just bad at it. Like, I was learning as I went, but I just felt like I was constantly doing stuff I didn't actually know how to do or I wasn't actually qualified for and figuring it out as I go. And now it kind of feels like we know what we're doing, which is cool. All right, so let's see. How do you build up the confidence to talk about stuff on YouTube? How many people did you have helping you with production in the beginning? In the beginning, it was me and like the guy that I was dating, where I was like, hey, I think I want to do a YouTube channel. And he's like, well, I know how to edit. Like, I'll show you how to do some basic editing. And I was like, okay, cool. And I had a camera that I had that I had bought because I was taking a photography class that I completely forgot about. But I had this camera still. I had a DSLR. I got like a cheap set of lights that are still the lights that I use for like $100. And I just filmed it up against the wall in my bedroom. And yeah, so it was just me and one other, you know, and the guy that I was dating at first, and I did most of the work at first. And how did I build up the confidence to talk about stuff on YouTube? I tried talking to the camera and realized really quickly my ADHD makes my brain be really chaotic in terms of thoughts and trying to say what I'm trying to say, and it was really difficult editing it. So I ended up putting together bullet points for myself, but then even that wasn't quite it. So I started scripting out what I wanted to say, and that was how I did it at first. Is I had to like script out what I wanted to say and make sure that I was comfortable with what I was saying, so that I didn't have to, when I'm on camera, worry about what to say and how I'm saying it at the same time. And that's helped me. That said, I still wasn't confident. I was still super shy and super nervous. I was kind of the shy, quiet kid that was always reading as you know, when I was little. But as I got older, I started waiting tables and I started taking acting classes and stuff, and I learned how to engage with a camera. I'm still really shy. I'm still really anxious, and there are times where yeah, every time I sit down to shoot, I am anxious about it. But it was this community, I think, that built up my confidence, because I saw that it was helping people. I saw the impact that it was making. And slowly, like, the team around me grew to be more and more supportive. Palestrina is our creative director now, and she directs all the vlogs. And that helps a lot too, because now those, you know, the vlogs are not scripted. I'm not deciding ahead of time what to say. I might have some bullet points. I know generally what I want to say, but I trust my team. I trust her to make sure that she's getting the story out of me, that I'm actually explaining it coherently, and that she can feel, and that she feels confident that she can edit it together into something that makes sense. But the nice thing is, like, you don't have to post anything on YouTube that you don't feel comfortable with posting. And this is the last thing I'll say about it. I made a rule for myself, because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I gave my perfectionism a different target to hit than being perfect, which was to put out 1 video a week. So when I first started, I was like, no matter what, I'm putting out 1 video a week, 1 video every Tuesday. And if I do that, then I can get it as perfect as I can within that week, but then I have to post it. And so there were times where I was not not super happy with the video that I was posting, but it had to go out. And I'm glad that I did it that way, because I think I got better at it faster than I would have if I had just taken a really long time to perfect any single episode. So it was a combination of, yeah, just do it, trust the people around me to tell me if it's not good, and practice, I guess. Do you still struggle with imposter syndrome despite this huge success? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I do. It's definitely gotten better. But one of the things that I started struggling with was when I realized I was being successful, but I hadn't I hadn't learned how to use all of the strategies and not have ADHD struggles at all anymore. And so people would be like, oh yeah, how did that thing work out? That strategy that you were trying last year? And I'd be like, I'd have imposter syndrome because I'm like, what strategy? Like I forgot about the strategy. I'm not using it anymore. You know, and I'm talking about how to improve your life when you have ADHD, but then like I'm not even using half these strategies because I forget about them and my life gets busy and stuff. And one of the things that helped me was to realize that through connecting with other ADHD advocates that none of us are using all the tools all the time, that it's not a thing. Like overcoming your ADHD completely is not a thing. And so I think just being more honest about that and talking on the channel, letting people see my struggles a little bit more, and not presenting myself as somebody who like has it all figured out has been helpful, because the imposter syndrome was telling me like, hey, you are presenting to the world somebody that you're not. And it was inadvertent. Like at the time that I was talking about these techniques and strategies, like I was really excited about them and they were working for me at the time. But I just wanted to make it clear that I don't use all these strategies all the time. And I do still struggle with my ADHD sometimes. And being honest about that, I think, has helped with the imposter syndrome. But that said, I have a new kind of imposter syndrome, which is I just got a book deal with Random House. And I'm going through the same thing all over again of like, who decided it was a good idea for me to write a book? Why did they think I was going to write a book? I mean, I'm telling them that I can do this, but I don't know if I can actually do this. So I think it's just another situation of like, I have to remember a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people feel like they shouldn't be allowed to do what they're doing, or like they've just fooled somebody into thinking that they can do it. And no, I can do this. Like they wouldn't have given me a book deal if it didn't make sense for me to write a book. So how it's going to go, I don't know. I just started yesterday and I have a meeting with my editor today, a kickoff meeting, but I am going to be writing How to ADHD the book. About the book you're working on. Hey, can you tell us any details of the content? Yes, so it's going to be super ambitious. I'm trying to write a book that gives people the experience of watching my TEDx talk, watching this channel, hanging out with this community and having coffee with me and hearing about my life and me talking to them about theirs, all in one book. So it's going to be part memoir, part research, part stories from the community. There's something really magical that's happened for me, and I think for a lot of people in this community, where just connecting with each other, it kind of normalizes the struggles. Learning about what's going on gives us the language for it. Learning strategies that can help leaves us a little more empowered than maybe we were before we understood our ADHD. And I'm trying to like bottle that like in a book that also people don't actually have to finish to get things out of. So I'm trying to make sure that the chapters are things that you can flip around to. So the book is called How to ADHD, and the chapters are going to be titled things like How to Sleep, How to Boundaries, or How to Set Boundaries, like things that we tend to struggle with. And it's going to be, stories, my story, the community stories interwoven with research and practical strategies. How I'm going to pull this off, we'll find out. And I glanced over quickly. I will go back to the questions, but I saw in the comments quickly. The book will be on Audible and all the things. And I'm going to be offered to, like, I get to read it. So I actually get to do the audiobook for it, which is really, it's cool. I'm excited. What was your inspiration to start this channel? Oh boy. So I started this channel when I was 31 years old, and I was divorced, living at home with my mom, and my credit was shot and my career was going nowhere. And it was really frustrating to me because it's not like I'd been doing nothing for the last, 13 years of adulthood. Like I'd been trying really hard to be successful. I'd started working at the age of 16, and like I worked my way through college, and I dropped out of college, but then I went and pursued acting for a while, and then that didn't go well, so I started a career as a massage therapist, and I was just doing all of these things and working really hard, and sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. When I was working 2 jobs, I also had the acting career thing I was trying to do on top of it, and so I was working really, really hard to try and get somewhere, but it felt like none of my effort had actually led anywhere, and I was frustrated because I had been a gifted kid. Like I was I was smart and I scored really well on the standardized tests, and I got straight A's in elementary school. And I was like, what happened? Like, wasn't I supposed to be successful? And it was so frustrating to me because I was waiting tables and at a really nice restaurant where all the people that came in and dined there were successful. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, why are they successful and I can't be, no matter how hard I try? And I'll talk about this in the book a little bit. I had a life coach that like was at a seminar that I went to for acting somehow, and I was like frustrated because at the time I couldn't lose 10 pounds. I was told by my manager, like, lose 10 pounds and we'll get you a pilot. Like, then you'll be successful. Do this thing in this, in this way that everybody else is supposed to do it, and then you'll be successful. And I just couldn't do it. And so I asked her, like, how do I do it? And she's like, well, you don't need to. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, for the last 10 years, my acting manager has been telling me, like, this is the thing in the way of my success. And like, once I can do that, then I'll be successful. And she's like, no, you don't need to be smaller. You need to be bigger. And I was like, what are you talking? Like, I was so angry, but she's the first person who had challenged me on this belief of like, I'm supposed to do things this way and then I'll be successful. And so I was like, well, can't really afford a life coach, but like, there's something here. So I think I picked up an extra shift at work waiting tables, and I went to go see her. And she told me, I was like, what do I do? How do I be successful? And she's like, you stop doing everything. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm already so far behind. I can't do that. And she was like, no, you don't know where you need to be putting your effort yet. So just stop. And I was like, well, I have to work. She's like, yes, you have to eat. So, work. But everything else that you're trying to do to catch up on life and to get ahead, just stop. And so I did for like a month. And I thought, I was still angry at her. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm already behind. Why am I stopping putting in effort? I need to be putting in more effort. And finally she said, finally I went to her like a month later, and my brain had actually a little bit of time to talk to me and tell me what it wanted, instead of me trying to force it to be what I wanted it to be and do things the way that I was supposed to. And I just went to her a month later and I was like, I think I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to learn about my ADHD. I want to learn what it is that's getting in my way of being successful, because I'm tired of putting all this effort in and not really feeling like I'm getting anywhere. So I want to know why. And I have ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was 12. I took medication for it. I thought it's just, you have trouble focusing, you take medication that helps you focus, and then everything else was my fault. But I remember occasionally seeing a strategy or a technique or something that was helpful for me for like a week or so before it was like helpful for like a week before I'd forget about it. And then by the time I remembered it again, I couldn't find it again. So I was like, I want to learn what's going on with my brain. I want to learn some strategies for helping me with it. And then I want to put it somewhere where I won't lose it. And the only place, like, because I lost everything. I'm so disorganized. I lost absolutely everything. So it's like the one place I know I won't lose is YouTube. Like, I will always know how to find YouTube. And so that's why I decided to put what I learned on YouTube. And again, I made it public in case it was helpful for anybody else. It's cool. So I'm kind of reading the comments in between. Thanks. Congrats. Oh my gosh, 1,020,000 subscribers. Wow, it's going so fast. All right. Have you heard of public speaking being particularly taxing for people with ADHD, or have any thoughts from your own experience? It's so interesting. It seems to fall into like one of two categories, and this is completely anecdotal. I don't know the research on this, but it's either people with ADHD love public speaking because it's urgent and it's exciting and it's stimulating to speak in public. It's really, it's easy to be bored while you're doing homework. It's a lot harder to be bored when you're standing on a stage and everybody's, watching you. But also there are some ADHD challenges, and this is based on research that can make it harder to do public speaking. One of them is, we have difficulty planning and prioritizing, sustaining effort toward our goals, and writing a talk is a long-term, like, sustaining effort toward goals thing. Working memory challenges. It can be hard to remember what we were just talking about or remember what we were trying to say, especially if we're also getting engagement from people. You'll see me getting distracted during the stream by the comments. Confidence issues, self-esteem issues of growing up feeling like we're too much or too weird, or people don't actually want to hear what we have to say. You know, maybe we info dump a lot. We talk about things that we're really interested in and excited about, but we don't realize that the other person's not as excited about it, and maybe we get some hurtful comments about that. So there's some self-esteem stuff to overcome. So I think it kind of goes both ways. Like there's some places where it's, you know, we're actually better. We're engaging and dynamic and fun and out of the box thinkers, and a lot of times bring new ideas to the table, and have really interesting things to talk about. But then narrowing down what to talk about, the convergent thinking is hard for us. The remembering stuff, you know, all of that. Yeah, I think there's advantages and disadvantages, but I will say when I watch a public speaker who has ADHD, I'm usually really engaged. Like I enjoy it a lot. They're usually a little more entertaining. Let's see. Okay, why didn't the live stream happen last week? Right. So we had scheduled this live stream last week, and then optimistically I was like, oh, I can't do it today, but like maybe tomorrow. So we rescheduled it for the next day. It didn't happen, and here's why. So for anybody who wears contacts, like contact lenses, this is a PSA. This is a public service announcement for anybody who uses contact lenses. There is a contact lens solution that has hydrogen peroxide in it, and you can buy it, and it looks just like any normal contact lens solution. It's called, I think the one that I got was Clean Care. And it comes with a special contact lens case that when I was really tired one night, I opened it and I was like, this looks really complicated. I don't know how to use this. I'm just going to use my normal contact lens case. Well, the problem with that is the contact special case, I used a normal contact lens case. So when I put my contacts in the morning, and I only got one in because it was real bad, it burned my eye like bad. It had hydrogen peroxide in it. And so I fell to the floor in agony, dug it out of my eye as fast as I could, flushed my eye out as well as I could. And this was 45 minutes before I was supposed to start the live stream. And so I called my team, I called Stephen and Palestrina, and I was just like, hey guys, like my eye is on fire and I gotta flush it out. I like put hydrogen peroxide in it apparently. I need to flush out my eye. I might be a little late. No, I don't even think I said I was gonna be late. I was just like, I gotta do this. I gotta flush out my eyeball. And Stephen was like, well, it's okay if we start a little late. And Palestrina, who's our creative director and in charge of keeping us on schedule, is like, well, don't say that, because like if we start a little late, then we'll actually start later. So like, let's try to aim for on time. And I was like, guys, I love you both. I need to finish flushing out my eye. Like it is on fire. So I was flushing out my eye, and then I got a ride to the studio, and I was about to try and do this live stream, and I just looked at my eye and it was like still crying, and I was just like, I can't. I probably can't do this. I have this kind of this show must go on mentality, but there's no way I can even read questions right now. So I was like, I can't do it today, but tomorrow. And then over the course of the day, the burning kind of got worse, and it was bad. And I ended up having to go to the ER, and they had to flush out my eyeball. So they take this contact thing and they stick it in your eye. To stare at bright lights and having to use it in the morning. So yeah, I had to cancel that too. But yeah, that's my PSA is if you get contact solution, careful what kind. Oh, when you cut away to a photo, the audio goes away. Good to know. Okay, so what did they miss? Oh yeah. Yeah. So the contact solution is called Clean Care, I think. Just be careful when you get contact lens solution. If it has hydrogen peroxide in it, if it comes with an overly complicated case, use it. Don't use your own case is what I learned. I ended up just getting regular contact solution because I don't trust myself to remember that. But when I was in the hospital, when I went to the ER, they put this, the thing that you saw a picture of, they put this tube in my eye, kind of, but not like in my eye. It's like a little contact thing attached to the end of it, and you put that in your eye, and then the tube has saline that it flushes out your eye. I wish, that's the other PSA, I wish I had done it sooner. If you have to flush out your eyes and they're still hurting after a little bit, like, go get them flushed, because it made a big difference. It stopped hurting so bad after that. Also, the lidocaine probably helped. Yeah, that was last week. I'm seeing the oh my gosh, the donations. Let me get to a couple of donations real quick before they go away, because I only see them for a little bit. Beth, thank you for your donation. That's gonna help us do so many cool things this year. How do you survive overwhelm? Best way to hold your life together. Okay, so I just did an episode about that I recorded a couple of days ago. Renee Brooks is another ADHD advocate, and her site is Black Girl Lost Keys, and her advice is amazing. Guard your yes with your life. Like, I am overwhelmed a lot, and usually I find that that's because I take on way more than I can actually handle, than I can actually accomplish. And so this episode is about ways to guard your yes, from figuring out in advance what your priorities are and what maybe your anti-priorities are. Like, what kinds of things do you tend to say yes to that maybe you want to not say yes to right now because you want to focus on some other things? Figuring out this stuff in advance can be really helpful, because we have our, ADHDers have impaired executive function, but it's not equally impaired. It's really our hot executive function that's impaired. The executive function that we use in the heat of the moment, when we're emotional, when we're having to make a decision on the spot, that's more impaired. And so our cool executive function, what we're using when we're trying to think about like what somebody else should do, or what, maybe future us should do, when we're a little more analytical, like that actually functions better. And so one of the things that is really good to do is figure out, in advance, what your priorities are, and have some sort of guideline, like an external. Is that the clear care? Oh, I think I'm behind on my own live stream. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, I just caught up on my own live stream. Have some sort of like external thing to check things against, and that can be a person too, like somebody who knows what you've got going on in your life, and you're like, hey, do I actually have time to do this thing? Just having something external, because in the moment our brains are going to be like, hey, it's urgent and fun and exciting, like let's do it. Or that's in the future, like it sounds cool, I'll totally have time for it in the future. And so we overcommit. There's a lot of reasons we overcommit, but it's, at least for me, that's a big part of the overwhelm, is just I've got too much on my plate. And the best way to hold your life together, is like it's really to say yes to fewer things and be really picky about that. And the other part is like buying yourself time. When somebody asks you if you want to do something, I used to think you have to answer right away because you have to respond right away. If somebody asks you a question, you respond, right? But you don't actually have to make a decision. You can respond with something called enthusiastic non-committal, which is a trick that I learned, which is, that sounds really exciting. I love that idea. Can you tell me more? Or let me check with my team, or let me check my calendar, like, or not even suggest that you're going to do it at all. Just like, wow, that's a super cool idea. And then when they ask you like, do you want to do it? That I'll have to think about. You can be enthusiastic about something without actually saying yes to it. And the last part of that was, just easier ways to say no. There are ways to make saying no a little bit easier, which I don't remember right now, which figures, this is why I put things in videos. But when that video comes out, it will be there. Thank you, Beth. That's a really good question. The fox. Thank you so much for making it public. You've helped me so much. Has helped me so much. You're a real gem. Thank you. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking to make it public, but I don't know. I had a feeling if I was struggling with this, like maybe other people were too. So it helped hold me accountable too. I don't think I would have kept going and stayed focused if I hadn't made it public. So Aw, thank you, Blake. Emily, Alexander Garcia, Patricio, Faith Brown, Crystal Johnson, Karen, Bud, say thank you. Your channel has helped me. That was really sweet, Blake. Sparky, I scored high on standardized tests in the 70s, so was seen as not wanting to do it right, as if I were immoral. My dyslexic brother scored low, so he was given Ritalin. He ended up a winner. I a loser. Yeah, that's, yeah. There's this thing that should almost be like, in my opinion, diagnostic criteria for being twice exceptional, like having ADHD and being gifted, which is, you have so much potential, you just need to try harder, as if it's our fault that we're not reaching that potential because we're gifted. So why aren't we doing better? And the truth is, you can be smart and still have challenges, still have executive function challenges that get in the way of actually capitalizing on that. Another echo from Blake. Elizabeth Donaldson Seeley at Keto Papa Peepoo Keto Papa Peepoo Poo. I don't know how to say that, but that's cool. Lainey Studio, Bunny, Linda Bucci, say thank you, and your channel helped me. Thank you. And then Sean asks, myself and so many people in chat have said how this channel helped them realize they had ADHD. How has the evolution of the channel changed your life? Oh gosh, so that's the thing. When I started the channel, I was like, maybe it'll be helpful for other people who also know that they have ADHD and like also, you know, want strategies to help them. I had no idea that people wouldn't know that they had ADHD and would find my channel and that would help them realize that they had it. That's been really an honor, because I think that whether you have a diagnosis or not, learning to understand how your brain works and that all these things that you used to think were your fault were actually measurable impairments that are common in people with ADHD, and it's not just you, and it's not just that you're not trying hard enough, and it's not just that you're a bad person or a bad friend or a bad employee, but like you've got legitimate obstacles in your way. I think that's been one of the most helpful things for the community, and definitely for me. I think the biggest thing that's happened is I've dropped the shame around it and realized, like, oh no, of course I'm struggling to remember what the person said at the beginning of their story, because it's been a few minutes and I've been trying to hold all this other information in my head and I have terrible working memory. Of course, you know, I'm not going to be able to sit still through a 3-hour meeting because I have ADHD and I'm fidgety and I forgot my fidget toy. So like, I'm not going to be able to stay focused that long, or my meds are wearing off or whatever. Just having reasons for it and understanding what's going on. It helps so much, because before it was like I was constantly tripping over invisible obstacles and thinking it was my fault for being clumsy, when it's like, no, those rocks are there, those obstacles are there, and just because I couldn't see them didn't make them any less real. So that's been the biggest thing for me, and that's been really empowering. I'm trying to figure out if I want to save this for the book or share it in the live stream, but it's kind of giving some things away. I'll save it for the book. There's a little bit more of an evolution of my story since then, but I will share it. I will save it for now, and I'm still fleshing out how to express it. All right, let me go back to the Google Doc. All right, what advice do you have for an adult female who is dealing with Let's try that again. What advice do you have for an adult female who's dealing with a dismissive doctor who won't refer her for an evaluation? Combined with, what's the process for getting a diagnosis? Another one on the process of diagnosis. So we want to do an episode on that, actually. So Patrick LeCount, who was our OG, like our original research consultant, and has been working on the channel for years, is a licensed psychologist now and does evaluations. And we were going to walk people through at some point the process of receiving a diagnosis. There are different ways to go about it. And depending on how old you are, different things. A lot of people will just go straight to, as adults, just go straight to a psychiatrist that understands ADHD, and that's the key. There's a lot of people who do get dismissed. The sad thing is, this question doesn't even surprise me. An adult female is dealing with a dismissive doctor who won't refer her for an evaluation. It's such a common thing. And in fact, my first doctor said that I couldn't have ADHD. My mom took me to a pediatrician, and that's what a lot of kids do, is they go to their pediatrician first and then, you know, can that pediatrician can either diagnose them or like send them out for an evaluation. But he just dismissed it outright. He was like, well, how did she do in school? My mom said, in elementary school, she got straight A's. She was a straight A student. She's a really good student. And they the doctor, I just realized something really important that I forgot about. Hang on. Oh, shoot. I have to unlock the house for a second. Sorry, guys. So at my new townhome, Chloe can't go up and down the stairs. And so I hired some people to like put risers in, because the stairs are, there's gaps in between them, and it scares her. And so she can't go up and down the stairs. And I just saw that they need in the house, and I can unlock the house from my phone, which is cool, except that I forgot to do it. So they're trying to get into the house and it's locked. Hang on. So I still have ADHD. Yeah. So yeah, my doctor said that I didn't have ADHD. I couldn't have ADHD because I was smart. And no, I very much do. My mom thankfully was like, thank you for your opinion. We'd like to see a specialist. And she was able to get a referral to a specialist. But I don't know the exact circumstances, but in general, if a doctor is dismissive, I would look for another doctor. A good place to look is Psychology Today. You can actually filter by your insurance. You can filter by specialty. You can make sure that it's somebody who actually understands ADHD. But you can go through, a psychiatrist, or I've had really good experiences with nurse practitioners, because they can take more time with you. There are some family care doctors that are great. We've had one on the channel talking about medication, but then there are some that it really comes down to whether or not they understand ADHD or they specialize in it. Especially women with ADHD tend to get dismissed and overlooked. And if you're a college age student, like, it's even harder because of the potential for abuse of the medication. A lot of people are suspicious and think you're just looking for an evaluation just to get the meds. So it's not an easy process, but I definitely recommend like looking for somebody who understands ADHD and is comfortable diagnosing it. And it's not, ADHD diagnosis isn't like a pregnancy test where it's like you're either ADHD or you're not. There's a spectrum, right? And the best presentation that I saw on it is like, okay, here are ADHD traits, right? Let's say, I don't know, distractibility, and there's a bell curve. Like, most people fall in the middle and like get distracted sometimes, but like mostly they can focus. And then there are the people who can like laser focus all the time. And then there are the people who, will get distracted by anything and forget everything, right, on this end. And at some point, it's not like an either or, but at some point they have to decide, where is the cutoff? Like, at what point are we considering this a disorder? At what point are we saying you're impaired enough that this warrants a diagnosis and treatment? And it's kind of arbitrary, and it's changed over the years where that line is. And so a lot of doctors are going to be more comfortable diagnosing ADHD that's more mild, and some might only catch the cases that are really severe, and some might not at all. But it's not an exact science. So one of the things that I like to tell people is, like, even if you don't actually qualify for an ADHD diagnosis, right, that doesn't mean that you're not struggling. You could just be barely on this side of the line of like, this is something you're dealing with, but not to the extent that we feel like we need to diagnose it and treat you or whatever. So if somebody's struggling, I'm like, there's a reason you're struggling. And it could be ADHD, it could be, I don't know, ADHD light, like it could be another condition, but there's so many people that come to me and are like, I'm scared that they're going to tell me that there's not anything going on and I'm just lazy, or I'm just stupid, or I'm just whatever. And I'm like, no, like, first of all, that should be added to the diagnostic criteria. There's so many people that are like, what if I don't have ADHD? What if I'm just lazy? I have heard that from so many people that then go on to get a diagnosis, and I'm like, this should really be in the diagnostic criteria, because ADHD is what Dr. Russell Barkley calls a motivation deficit disorder. It looks like we're lazy because our brains aren't stimulated and engaged, and it can be really hard for us to get the motivation and sustain the motivation to do the thing. But that's not laziness. And in fact, a lot of people with ADHD, most that I have met, work harder than our peers, try harder to accomplish the same things. So yeah, it's not laziness. Let me see, what else we got here? God, I wish I could just sit down with all of you and take you out to coffee. This is really cool. Jennifer, thank you for the informative videos. They've enabled me to make more sense of my diagnosis at 40+ years old. Hey, yeah. Yeah, so some people are finding out for the first time that they have ADHD and like, this explains so much. And then there are those of us like me who were diagnosed with it for a long time who then learn what it actually entails and are like, oh, this explains so much. Kenneth, twice exceptional was a lifelong struggle of what I now know is typical ADHD from both my daughter and me. Same story as many. Straight A student, high standardized testing, both now on meds and migraine free. Thank you. Good. Yeah, migraine free. So chronic pain is one of the things that can happen with ADHD, especially if it goes untreated. And there is a link with migraines specifically. I'm kind of interested to dig in more into the research on that, but that's really cool. Just reading through the comments quickly in real time. How to ADHD meetup? We want to. Yes, I gotta get my COVID booster shot, and then I'm thinking about it. You're amazing. Oh, thank you. These are so cute. I'm getting distracted by this chat. Yeah. Is there a study where chronic pain, headaches, and ADHD you can point to? Yeah, so one of our research consultants is really interested in this and is gathering the research on that for us right now. We're going to be doing an episode on that. Aw, Blake. Can I get your book signed? I have no idea how that works. Good question. ADHD and pregnant, can you please help with that? Yeah, that's another thing that I want to talk about. Giant D&D bug. What class is your favorite? I play clerics. Okay, back to the questions. All right, let's see. There's so many good questions. Oh, sweet. Okay, I'm seeing that the mods are highlighting some questions. I'm guessing they're highlighting the questions that several people are asking, so I'm going to get to those first. Do you have trouble remembering your text for videos? Anything that helps you recording videos with ADHD? Yeah, I figured out real quick that I can't memorize. Like that was one of the things that was hard for me as an actress, and I don't have to. For a long time, I had a whiteboard. I can actually show you. Hang on.
So just so you know, Jessica.
Yep.
The highlights are actually just...
Oh, okay. All right, so apparently the highlights are just people who are in dark mode on YouTube, but mods, if you're listening, if you can like maybe highlight some of the questions that are things that a lot of people are asking so that I can prioritize those questions. So that board is what I've used for most of my YouTube channel, where I just print out the scripts in 30-point font and stick it on a board, and I just would look down at the board, you know, remember that one line and then look at the camera and say it. And that's why the jump cuts, that's our style, is we're covering all the times that I had to look down to like look at what I wanted to say and then look back up the camera to actually say it. And it ended up working out because people were like, hey, this is really engaging. I can actually stay focused because it keeps jumping around. Every once in a while somebody's like, this is making it harder for me to focus. And I was like, Yeah, it'd be nice if I didn't have to do it, but that's where we're at. And now I use a teleprompter, but I end up doing the same thing where I just like look at the teleprompter, I see the line, and then I say the line to the camera, because I feel like you lose a little bit of something if you're just reading a teleprompter, because you're looking at the words instead of at the people you're talking to. But I do use a teleprompter now. I have a really hard time memorizing things. It is so boring. Okay. What was the cashier's name from that episode of Monk? I don't think she had a name. I don't remember, but yes, I was on Monk. And it's funny because it's one of the smaller acting performances I ever did. I've done much bigger roles, but it's the one that keeps playing. So I think I have like 2 lines as a cashier in an episode of Monk. I don't remember the name. What about starting work toward modifying laws regarding prescriptions for neurodivergent individuals? I've been fighting for a month to get a prescription for a decades-old diagnosis with years-old prescription. Yes, this is something I'm very, very, very interested in. And when I assemble my ADHD army, this might be something that I'm like, all right, it's time. It's time. Like, let's all write letters and explain the situation. We have actually done some advocacy work in the past. There was, I forget what state it was, but there was one state in the United States that was going to pass a law that required all class 2, I think, drugs, like all the, opioids and stuff like that, to require a new prescription every 3 days. And I was like, absolutely not. So I did get the channel involved in that. I'm like, guys, they're asking for feedback on this. Let's give them our feedback. And so I don't know how much of it was what we did, but they did end up repealing that. They went back on that, because that, I mean, I can't even imagine. It's bad enough to have to get a new prescription every month. Every 3 days would be impossible. So that is something that I would like to tackle. It's something that I still have trouble with. Right now, my insurance won't pay for my Vyvanse because it's more expensive. There's no generic for it. And so they're insisting that I try a different medication for a while. And so I'm having to I'm actually having a harder time staying focused on this than usual, because I'm on a medication that works okay for me, but not as well as the medication I'm on. But I have to try it for a month, even though I've tried it before. I know that this doesn't work as well for me. I still have to try it recently for them to know that, okay, no, it really doesn't work for me. I really need to be on this other thing. It's ridiculous. I really have a problem with the way that ADHD treatment is not ADHD friendly, and it is something that I want to work on fixing. But I'm also looking at, there's some organizations that I'm talking to. There's, I think AHEAD is one, DONE is another one, where they're trying to make ADHD treatment more accessible for people with ADHD and specifically serve the ADHD community. So I'm talking to them. I'm trying to advocate for things that are important that I've heard from people in this community, and things that I've struggled with myself, to try and make sure that it is as accessible as possible. So I'm basically consulting on those and trying to see if I can make them better. DONE, I haven't talked to yet. I'm still working with getting connected with them, but it is something that's deeply important to me, and something I've struggled with my whole life. Like, I've been diagnosed since I was 12. I've been taking meds since I was 12, on and off. I did go off for a couple of years because I had a boyfriend who's like, you don't need those, and look at all the, side effects. And I was like, yeah, you're right, that's scary. I went off my meds, and like, turns out there's a lot of side effects to not treating your ADHD too, that people don't really think about. So I went back on them, but it's still a struggle for me to get my meds. Yeah. Let's see. How are you? I'm proud of the work you put in for our ADHD family. Do you have any plans for the year 2022? Congrats on your subscribers. Yeah, I mean, the book is my big plan. But we have actually 3 things. I was talking about it a little bit earlier, like figuring out what your priorities are in advance. I actually did figure out what my priorities are, and I will read them to you this year, so you know what I'm doing. I figured out 3 priorities for the company this year. And me telling you will hopefully hold us a little bit accountable. We're not going to be perfect, but these are the things that are important to us. If I can find them. There we go. So this is 2022, how to ADHD vision, goals, and objectives. So there's 3. The first one is honor the ball of string. And I have to tell a story for this to make sense. I used to try and respond to every single message and every single comment back when I was a small enough YouTuber that I could theoretically do that if I didn't ever take a break. And there was a lot of pressure. There were so many people that were reaching out for help, and I wanted to help all of them because it was like I knew the struggle, and I've been there. And if I had information that could help them, I wanted to share it. And I wanted to respond to all the people. And it just got to the point where I couldn't. As the channel grew, there were more and more people reaching out, and I already wasn't getting any time for myself. I was starting to burn out. And so, but I was like, how do I not respond? How do I not respond to every single comment? Because people need support and they're not getting it. I mean, they're really like, the support that's available for people with ADHD is not enough right now. And so if I can help, like, somebody reaching out in crisis, that's always going to be more important than me like watching a TV show where I'm just like, I want to sit and chill, but like this person needs help, so I have to respond. And somebody pointed out once that yeah, it's always going to be more important to help somebody with something they're struggling with than to watch a TV show, but it's equally important for you to be able to relax and recharge so that you can keep going and not burn out. And that's important too. And so I was in the middle of grappling with this when I went to take a peer support training class, because I was like, okay, I'm in this situation where I am supporting my peers, supporting people who are also struggling with the same things I'm struggling with, and I don't know how to do this. So let me take a course. And there was a free class available. There might be still free peer support training classes available, and I highly recommend anybody take one, because it's helped me out with how to support friends and this community. And I mean, it's helped me in general as a person. But the training class was really, really good. And one of the things that we learned was about the ball of string. And it was a demonstration about how everybody has an invisible string. And this string is your support network. It's what connects you to other people, right? But a lot of times people who need support, who are coming in for services, like maybe they're homeless, and they're coming into an organization looking for support, they're handing you a ball of string saying, hey, I need support, right? And if you hold that ball of string, if you hold that whole ball of string and try to be there for that person in all the ways that they need you to be, what happens if you go to sleep? Now, nobody has their ball of string. So the goal is that you take that ball of string and then you pass it to somebody else. Like, you hold your piece, but then you pass it to somebody else. You connect them to somebody else. They connect them to somebody else who, and they were like, who might somebody who's homeless meet in this situation? Like, oh, okay, well, like, maybe maybe you'll introduce them to somebody who can help them get a job. Okay, cool, a job counselor. Maybe you introduce them to, you get them housing. Great, now they have connection to the housing agency, maybe the landlord, and the ball of string kept getting passed around the class. Everybody just held their part of the string. And then the teacher said, now everybody who goes home at the end of the night, drop your string. And people dropped their string, and it became clear that for a lot of people looking for support, once the professional support goes away at 5 p.m. or whatever, or when they stop being able to afford it, like, their support goes away. And so I learned two important things. One is you have to accept people's ball of string, but then you have to pass it. You have to connect them to other sources of support, because you can't be there all the time. But also, some of those sources of support need to be other people that are not professionals. Like, they need friends and companions that are going to be available at like 3 a.m. when they're sad. And so this is one of the big goals for this year, is to honor the ball of string and recognize that a lot of people, when they find this channel, need support. And we want to make sure that we're taking their ball of string and then passing it. So we want to build a resource page. We want to connect our community with resources to support them in their journey. We want to create content that's like visibly in response to people in our community, so that they understand that we are accepting that ball of string and being responsible for it, and recognizing and valuing that they're coming to us going, hey, like, I need help. And then I want to increase our response rate across social media and other platforms, so that when people reach out, even though I can't reach out to everybody individually, that they are still getting a response. So we hired on a community manager, Harley, who has been community managing our Discord channel through Patreon for a while. We have a community over on Patreon that's really, really great. But we want to make sure that anybody who's reaching out on our other platforms gets responses too. So they are now, and Harley is they, them. Harley is now going to be our community manager across platforms and make sure that we're finding ways to respond to the community and to connect people and building resource pages. Yeah, it's, what did I have? Yeah, if we're the first resource that people are sent to when they have ADHD, which a lot of therapists and other mental health professionals are doing, they're sending people to our channel. That means a lot of people are coming to us with a lot of string, and it's our responsibility to accept it and hold that string and pass the ball string so that they can have an entire support system, including each other, of which I and our channel is just one part. So that's a huge goal. See what people are saying. Oh, I saw that. Do you have a title yet for the book? The book's called How to ADHD. Yeah, and the video will be available on the channel afterward, by the way. Harley says, we got it down. Cool. All right. So the other one is to empower our team to achieve what they want to achieve. We've done a really good job, I think, so far in our videos, empowering our community. Like, hey, here's some tools and strategies. Like, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, like, here are some ways that you can do it. We want to do that for our team as well. So we're trying to create more support and accountability toward hitting individual goals for everybody on our team. We want to, this is why, thank you for the donations. We're trying to increase our revenue so that we can, make sure that everybody's getting paid enough that they don't also have to have a second job, so that they can, take care of their kids or have a life. And we're trying to increase team engagement and prevent burnout, because everybody that works on this team is working really hard and a lot of hours, and I don't want anybody to burn out. I want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on everybody's mental health, because while we're trying to create a channel that supports people in their mental health, we want to make sure that our mental health is supported too. So that's a big one. And my assistant that I hired a year ago, I've brought on to now be our operations manager, and basically it's going to be responsible for meeting with everybody on the team and making sure that they're supported and they have what they need to be able to do what they're trying to do, so that hopefully we can do more and also have a life and not burn out. And then the last one is to maintain and improve our status as the go-to resource for ADHD worldwide. And by that, I mean, we want to make things more accessible. We want to put things in more languages. I want to write the book. We want to increase accessibility across platforms, because not everybody's on YouTube. So, posting more on TikTok and Instagram, and maybe translating some of the videos into blog articles for the website. The funny thing is, I don't usually watch videos when I want to learn something. I usually read articles. And so I am making videos, and some people are going to benefit from that, but I actually wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have clicked on a video. I probably would have read an article. So if I'm not putting this content in article form, it's kind of funny, because I don't think I would have found it. I don't think I would have benefited from it personally, which is interesting. And then maintain and improve our credibility. So we're working with research consultants, and then we're going to try and this year start even reaching out to the people doing the actual research, and talk about it, talk about the latest cutting edge research. In the past, I played it really safe of okay, only if there's a lot of studies on this and it's really well vetted, then I'll talk about it. But we're going to be talking maybe a little bit more about cutting edge research and what we're finding now. Ooh, yeah, come up with a way to have local How to ADHD groups of some sort to link with people locally. That would be cool too. Starting a podcast. A podcast would be really cool. I think this year I'm focused on the book. I want to make sure that we're still putting out content on the channel, but I'm really big on monotasking, so I want to make sure that I'm trying to do one thing at a time for the most part. So I've laid out my year so that 1 week is my CEO week, and it's where I'm a business person and managing my team and making decisions and providing guidance and support and all of that. And then 1 week that's our production week, where I'm shooting vlogs or writing episodes, doing that kind of thing. And then 2 weeks out of the month, I'll be working on the book. So I've I have told my business manager, and I'll tell you guys too, and I'll tell my team, I am committing to not commit to anything new this year because I really want to make sure that the book goes well. So we'll still be doing all the things that we're already doing, but everything else new is going to be our team doing it. So, you know, the content we'll be putting out on TikTok or whatever, like I've got a couple of people that are going to help me like go through old episodes and bullet point out some things, and then I can just sit in front of the camera and like talk about it again. And then our post-production team will make it all polished and stuff like that. So we're trying to do more without adding more to my plate this year, I guess, which is interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's it. We're trying to increase accessibility while maintaining credibility. We're trying to honor the ball of string that people need support that they're not getting, and figure out how to improve their ability to get it, and then empower our team as well. And it's kind of like putting into practice what we preach. This is cool. All right, so let's go back to, oh gosh, where did I put it? Oh no, I have way too many tabs open. Nope, not that one. There we go. All right, going to the highlighted ones. Ooh, I like this one. How do you feel, what do you think about self-diagnosis? Is it valid? Okay, so I call it self-suspecting, but I think that it's not only valid, it's a really important step. There was a time where it was like, disclaimers, I am not a doctor, don't self-diagnose, all of that. And then I realized like there are a lot of doctors that don't understand ADHD, and suspecting that you have ADHD and acting as if and being like, hey, like, let me try these strategies. Let me see if this is what's going on with me. It's really, really not only valid, but really important, I think, as a step. I do also think it's important to go get a diagnosis by somebody who understands ADHD, because sometimes things that that we think are ADHD are actually other things. So like for me, a big thing has been anxiety has been responsible for a lot of things that I used to like think were just my ADHD, and trauma as well. I have a trauma history, and a lot of my trauma has impacted things like my rejection sensitivity and my emotional dysregulation, and even my impulsive choices that I thought were just me being impulsive and like rushing into relationships. There was a reason for that was rooted in trauma. So the thing is, you can't actually heal your ADHD. Like that's not a thing. You're not going to overcome your ADHD and not be ADHD anymore, but you can heal trauma, and you can treat anxiety and make the anxiety go away to a certain extent. Depending, right? Like things like anxiety, depression might be things we're predisposed to and always going to struggle with on some level, but the ADHD is fairly constant. Like your symptoms are not really going to change. Like your impairments can change, the amount that's affecting your life, but like besides taking meds and then the meds wear off, you're still going to have your ADHD symptoms, whereas anxiety can decrease, depression can decrease, trauma can be healed, all of that. And so the reason why I think it's really important to actually go get a diagnosis is to really suss out, is it ADHD? Is it something else? Is it ADHD and something else? Because more than 70% of people with ADHD also have a comorbidity. There's also something else. So while I think it's completely valid to be like, yeah, I suspect I have ADHD and I really resonate with all this stuff and kind of investigate that, I do think when possible, it's important to figure out what else is going on, because usually there is something else going on as well, whether it's learning disability or autism or anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever. There's usually more going on, and that needs to be treated too. So, yeah. Also, I mean, if we just talk purely about accessibility, especially for the autistic community, an autism diagnosis is really expensive, and it's for both ADHD and autism. The diagnostic criteria fits the stereotypically male presentation better than it does for female. So, if you are female or socialized female, like it's often a lot harder to get an accurate diagnosis. And so a lot of people, including one of my very close friends, is like, I have autism. She doesn't have a formal evaluation, but she's also trans. She is also, just struggling with a lot of other things as well, including bipolar. And there's there's just other things that are going on. So that kind of masks, and this is especially true for women with ADHD, is like there are other things that are going on a lot of the time that mask the ADHD. And sometimes those things need to get sussed out and treated first. But because of that, we're often misdiagnosed. And I saw another question about bipolar. We're often misdiagnosed as bipolar or with depression or other things. Or maybe we do have those things, but there's also an underlying ADHD that if that were treated, it would help, that gets missed. So what was the question? Yeah, self-diagnosis. So yeah, I think it's an important step in, because if you don't go, you know what, this seems like this is autism, or this seems like it's ADHD, and go to the doctor kind of prepared to talk about that, sometimes it'll get completely missed. And so I don't think it's like the be all end all, but I do think it's completely valid. Let me see. Yeah, very true for me. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until high school, but I got diagnosed with my learning disability when I was about 5. Yeah. Let's go ADHD. Oh yeah, we're live. Okay, cool. Okay, so how do you deal with an employer who deals with your ADHD with toxic positivity? Ironically, it was my employer who introduced your YouTube channel to me in a PD. Students can have support needs, but teachers can't, I guess. So I don't know the exact situation there. I'm sure it's complicated, but there are people who do deal with ADHD with toxic positivity and are like, oh my gosh, you have a superpower. And I'm like, yes, and you know, there's some things that I really value about my ADHD, and there's some things that some ways that it really gets in my way. And my go-to is usually just education, just because my ADHD makes me creative and ambitious and all these things doesn't mean that I don't also struggle. And one of the things that I've had to say, like conversations that I've had to have with people, is like, hey, it makes me feel invalidated in my struggles when you say things like this, because sometimes people just don't know, and they're trying to be positive and they're trying to be helpful, and they're just over helping. And I think allies tend to do that a lot, of like, just in their attempt to be a good ally, or in their attempt to, like, you know, if they're an ally, or if they have ADHD themselves, like they're going too far the other way sometimes, of like, instead of like, oh, it's a terrible thing and like you should be ashamed of it, like, it's totally fine, it's great that you have this thing. I think that it's a matter of education, really, and time. I think that when somebody first becomes an ally or first discovers their own ADHD or whatever, sometimes like we swing a little too far. I don't know if I'm making any sense with this, but I think it's like, it's a way of trying to be helpful that that can accidentally be invalidating. And so that's, I think anytime there's a situation like that, it's about a conversation and education, because maybe they don't realize the impact that it's having, and they think they're trying to help, or they think they're helping when it's actually hurting. So I don't know if that applies to your situation, but that's what it made me think of. G4M3Z. If you're here in real time, say my name. I don't know what your name is. Wait, Games is I don't know. Games? I'm in Concerta, upped a few days ago to 27 milligrams. I find I'm tired and sleeping 12 to 15 hours a night and not able to wake up. Will this pass? Thank you. Talk to your doctor. There is a really interesting thing where a lot of people with ADHD, once they start taking stimulants, it calms their brain down enough that they're able to sleep. And sometimes we've got like a huge sleep debt, and so that can happen. And some people are even prescribed a low dose of their stimulants to help them sleep through the night. But that's definitely something to talk to your doctor about. because it's interesting. ADHD meds affect everybody differently. And while I'm on the subject, another PSA is if you've ever tried ADHD meds and they didn't work for you, you didn't like how you felt on them, there's so many different ADHD meds now that the odds are you can find something that works for you that doesn't give you side effects that you don't want. And it just depends. Like I've tried many different ones, and the side effects that were problematic for me on some, I don't have it all on the ones that I'm on now, but the medication I take now for somebody else might actually have side effects. Just our brains and biology are different. So, yeah, I personally can't sleep on my stimulant meds, but other people actually have an easier time doing it. So it's interesting. I see. Yeah, Strattera didn't work for me. Strattera is a non-stimulant. Non-stimulant medications are also options, but I was even just talking about the different kinds of stimulant medications available. What's your 30-second or less explanation of ADHD so that I can tell others? All right, let me see if I can do this in 30 seconds. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or sorry, hang on, let me start over. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is kind of a terrible name for it because it's not actually that we have a deficit in attention, it's that we have trouble regulating our attention. And we have a lot of trouble regulating other things as well, including our sleep, our emotions, and executive function is a real challenge for people with ADHD. Just planning, prioritizing, sustaining effort toward our goals, staying organized. Getting through a day can be really challenging for people with ADHD. Did I do that in 30 seconds? Yeah, we're recording this for later viewing. Talking fast, yeah. Yeah, I don't think fewer words. I'm just like, oh, I'll just talk faster. All right, let's see. I did it. I clicked the thing. Okay, so now these things highlighted. What's the best advice you received when you have ADHD? Ooh, I might have to think about that one. The best advice. I feel like depending on the day you ask me this, I'll probably have a different answer, but today my answer is accept that you have ADHD and learn about it. There's another thing that life coach that I saw for like 5 minutes before I couldn't afford her anymore said to me, which is, if you think about where you want to go, think about it like a GPS. You can't just know where you want to go. You have to know where you're starting from, or you're not going to get there. And so, like, a big part of being able to get to where you want to go is knowing where you're starting from. And if you have ADHD, you're starting from you having ADHD. And so what does that mean? And like, how does it impact you? That's, I think, the best advice is like, there's this concept of radical acceptance where a lot of the stress and the shame and everything that we feel can go away if we just accept that things are the way they are. And we do have ADHD, and that, you know, that can mean a lot of things. And, you know, again, I do think that like, I wouldn't trade my ADHD brain for the world. To me, having a neurotypical brain sounds boring. That might be because my brain has ADHD, but I actually love the creative thinking. I love the spontaneity and the novelty and the passion and the, you know, roller coaster of emotions. I don't always love it, and I don't always love the impact it has on my life, but there are a lot of things I love about it. But I also have to be really real about the challenges and the limitations that I have because of it. And which brings me to the second piece of really good advice, which is, this was advice I got, I don't even remember where I got it, but somebody said once and it stuck with me. If you want to do more, do less. Because ADHDers tend to try to do everything at the same time, and then it doesn't work out, and then we get frustrated with ourselves and feel like failures, and then try to make up for lost time. And going slower, like working on building up our brakes, as Dr. Hallowell puts it, is really key. Whether it's guarding your yes with your life, or taking a pause before you respond to somebody in the heat of a moment, or, you know, putting a conversation on pause for the day if you're overheated or whatever, slowing down is not something that comes naturally to us, and it's something we have to work on. And even like putting, boundaries or barriers in place, like putting away cues to, like I put away the cue to watch TV. I try to hide my TVs so that I don't automatically sit down and watch TV, so that I can do the other things that I need to do. I have my gaming computer now at the same desk that I'm going to be writing my books. So at night, I actually take my keyboard and my mouse and I put it in a different room, so that in the morning I won't get to my computer and then try to game. I won't be able to. I'll be like, all right, it's time to work. What game do you play? Out of them, I was obsessed with The Sims, and I just started playing The Sims again with a friend. Valheim. I love Valheim. It's so ADHD friendly. I love Don't Starve. Don't Starve Together is really fun. I can't do first person shooters. I can't do it. I get scared. What do you do for yourself when you find you're talking about ADHD so much that you're tired of it? Currently, I'm taking a class on storytelling for connection, because I realized at some point, like, all of my stories became about ADHD and trauma, like over the last couple years. And I'm like, I need to remember how to tell other stories, because, talking about trauma and ADHD is great on the channel, but if I'm at a party, not everybody wants to hear about my trauma. So I should learn other things. So I'm actually taking a course to help me. It's a 5-week course. It started last night, and it's been really cool already. And I'm just going to start practicing telling stories that aren't related to my ADHD, because I do get tired of it sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I've spent 6 years learning about this and studying this. Like, I want to also, like, have other aspects to my life now. Yeah. Okay, I see another highlighted one. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing, but I think that I read somewhere how to stop being a people pleaser. Yeah, I usually just unable to say no unless something is really out of line. Do you think this might be part of ADHD? It's absolutely part of ADHD. Yeah, people pleasing is a well-known phenomenon in our community. For a number of reasons. One, I think, is, like, honestly, it can be a subtle way to procrastinate. If somebody is like, hey, can you help me with something? It's like, cool, I get to, like, do something that's urgent and get the dopamine, and the pleasure chemicals of helping somebody right now, instead of having to fight through studying this material that I was really bored of. Okay. And the impulsivity in saying yes to things. But also it can be a self-esteem thing of, like, well, my time isn't worth much. So, like, yeah, if this person needs something, then I'll be there. It can be a self-esteem thing in terms of, like, feeling like you need to be of service in order to be valuable, because a lot of us have gotten a lot of little messages that we aren't valuable as we are, because we have ADHD. And so it's almost like, okay, to make up for it, or, to make up for it, we have to make other people happy and get that validation. But another thing is, ADHDers tend to respond not as well as neurotypical people to punishment. So if there are consequences to our actions, like, that actually doesn't affect us as much as it would for somebody who's neurotypical. But thinking of the carrot and stick, like, the stick doesn't really work effectively for us, or at least as effectively as it would for somebody who's neurotypical, but the carrots work real well. The instant positive feedback, the getting to feel good about yourself, like, the instant rewards do really well for us. And so that's actually another aspect of it, is if you are making somebody happy, you're getting that instant, immediate feedback of, like, I did something good, I did something right. And so those are more powerful for our brain. I could get into it. Like, there's a lot of research on this, and there's a lot of information, but yeah, ADHD is absolutely people pleasers. And one of the tricks I'm trying to remember is when people pleasing, because I think that in some ways there's something really beautiful about it. Like, that there's just so many of us out in the world that are like, I just want other people to be happy, and I'm willing to do what I need to do to, like, make sure that somebody else has a good day. And that's really great. And I think we tend to be like really good, you know, in helping professions. I think we do really well as friends. Like we're the friends that'll drop everything and come help out and stuff like that. And I think there's something really good about that. But we still need to have boundaries, and we need to remember that when people pleasing, we are people too, and so taking care of ourselves is also important. And so, yeah, to me, boundaries is kind of the answer to it. Like, I accept that I'm a people pleaser. I kind of like that about myself, but I also need to have boundaries around my time, around what I will and won't say yes to, and remember that I am people too, and I'm one of the people that I need to please. Okay. Ooh. Okay. I have to figure out how to save the chat because I actually want to like go back and read all of the comments.
So when
That's cool. Okay. So Stephen, who's running the stream, just told me that that the chat will actually be available once, and just good to know for you guys. If you're not aware of this, your comments will still be available once it becomes a video after the stream ends. So I'll actually be able to read through all the comments. Okay, chat gets saved automatically. Cool. Are really big mugs an ADHD thing? I don't know. To be honest, like the regular cups weren't available. And I remembered that I needed water like 2 seconds before I was about to go live. So I grabbed the biggest mug I could find. Okay. Yeah, so we'll be able to see the comments later. Thank you so much for coming to the stream, by the way. This is really cool. All right, I will keep going through questions. Again, if you're just getting here, so what's happening is I'm doing an AMA live stream for hitting 1 million subscribers. You can literally ask me anything and I will answer as many questions as I can. We'll probably go for another hour, I think, half hour. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But it will be available afterward. And if you have questions, just ask them in the comments. And you don't have to repeat them a bunch of times because we have mods pulling them into a separate document. So I've got a bunch of questions here that I haven't gotten to yet. But still ask your questions anyway, because what I'm having the mods do is if they see that several different people are asking the same type of question, they'll highlight that so that I can get to that first. So even though I've got a bunch more questions to get through, just still ask your questions and I will still get to as many as I can, and prioritize the ones that a bunch of people seem to be asking. Let's see. Cool. All right, so the highlighted ones are gone, so now I can just pick. Let's see. Am I a dog person or a cat person? Hey, Chloe. Cats are great, but I am a dog person. This is Chloe. She's my psychiatric service dog. She's on break right now. She actually knows when I'm working is when I'm most likely to be fine. So that's when she takes her breaks and sleeps. So she's off duty right now. She's very tired. Hi, kiddo. Oh, yes. What's funny is that she's also teaching me boundaries. This dog has better boundaries than I will ever have. All right, let's see. I answered that. Okay. I kind of talked about this a little earlier, but yeah, what do you think about the fact that ADHD tends to get confused with bipolar disorder? The fact that therapists say the two go hand in hand. Did you ever wonder if you had ASD as well instead before your diagnosis of ADHD? So my brother was diagnosed with autism, and a few years ago, I actually did wonder if I was on the spectrum as well, because I was having a lot of sensory sensitivities and things were really overwhelming. And I connected with my friend who, I started living for a little bit with a friend who does have autism and was really well educated in how it presents differently in females. And so for a while I was wondering, and the conclusion I kind of came to is, and I haven't gotten evaluated for it, but the conclusion I kind of came to is like autism adjacent, sort of. Like there are a lot of things I relate to, but I don't think I would actually qualify for an autistic or for a diagnosis of autism. But I mean, there are so many things that overlap, and that's why it gets confusing for doctors to try and evaluate what it is that you're actually dealing with, because I do have a lot of difficulty picking up on social cues, but in ADHD that can be because it can be because of my anxiety, it can be because of my ADHD. Like I miss the social cues. The truth is, like if I see the social cue, I can usually tell what it means. So I don't have the same social difficulties that most people with autism seem to. I also have sensory sensitivities, but that can exist in ADHD as well. So I kind of went through it, and this was kind of my thought, like there wasn't enough there to say that I have autism that it made sense for me to seek a diagnosis, but I did suspect for a while. And ADHD can get confused with bipolar disorder because, first of all, like you can have both. You can have ADHD and bipolar, but one of the reasons why a lot of people with ADHD actually get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder is because the therapists don't understand, or the doctors don't understand, that emotional dysregulation is actually a really common part of ADHD. So they see the emotional dysregulation and they think mood disorder, when ADHD does involve emotional dysregulation. And the reason why therapists and doctors don't often know that is because we only know that in the research. It's not actually listed in the DSM, and the diagnostic criteria for ADHD does not include anything about emotional dysregulation. And the reason for that is when they were starting to try and legitimize ADHD in like the 70s and research it, they found that emotions were really difficult to research. So even though they knew that this was probably a part of it, they decided to focus on the things that were more easy to measure. So the hyperactivity and the impulsivity and the inattention, those things were a lot easier to measure. And so those are the things that ended up being the core features of ADHD that ended up getting put in the DSM. But again, because it's not in the DSM, because it's not part of the diagnostic criteria, even though emotional dysregulation is a huge part of ADHD, doctors don't know that. And so they end up diagnosing people with mood disorders instead of ADHD because that's what they think it is. So that's that. We're getting through a lot of questions. Gosh, I actually like know this stuff now. It's real weird. When I first started, one of the reasons I had to script everything was I didn't know what the heck I was talking about. And so I didn't know what this terminology meant. And I had to make sure that I was writing it out to make sure that I was using the correct term. And now I can just speak off the cuff about it, which is kind of cool. Yeah, the mood disorder situation happened to me many years ago. I was finally ready to get diagnosed with ADHD, but psych claimed I had bipolar, which I knew couldn't be right. Delayed my care for years. Yeah. All right, let's see. Can you talk about getting your service dog for ADHD? Yeah, so I actually, Chloe was an emotional support animal for me, and so was the dog that I had before her, and her name was Brandy. The difference is an emotional support animal is just an animal that supports you in your mental health condition or disability or whatever, but they're not necessarily like trained to do that. They just, by being a dog, are helpful to you in some way. So like Brandy and Chloe were both like just emotionally comforting to me, got me, because I had a dog, I had to like go outside in the morning and go outside at night and actually go to bed. Like there were things that that they did to help me stay on my schedule, but they weren't trained to do any of it. It was just incidentally helpful. And so if you want if you want a dog, or if you want a cat, like if you want an emotional support animal, you can have one if you have a doctor that will write you a letter for it, even in apartment buildings, at least in the US, in the States, even in apartment buildings that wouldn't otherwise allow animals, you can have an emotional support animal because you need it, because it's helpful. At some point, and this actually first started when I was wondering if I had an autism diagnosis, somehow to me that made it feel like more valid that I was struggling enough that I might need a service dog. But it was kind of when I was like, I think if I find out like I'm autistic, then I'll get a service dog, because to me it seemed totally valid, because my brother had service dogs and he's autistic. So like, if I'm autistic, then I can have a service dog, right? And like, that was kind of it. But when I realized I don't think I actually have autism, I kind of dropped that for a while. And about a year later, I realized, okay, it's not a competition. Like, it's not like you have to be, struggling with multiple things to be able to have a service dog, or you have to be struggling as much as my brother is struggling to have a service dog. Like, it's okay. It doesn't take anything away from people if I have a service dog and she's helpful with my ADHD. So I was kind of going back and forth on it, just having a service dog for ADHD, which is not a common thing. But she's already so helpful for me. And there were things that I was like, if she could be trained to help me with the things that I still struggle with, because after learning all these strategies, there are still things that I struggle with. And if I could train her to help with that, maybe that would make sense. And as I was trying to figure that out, in the middle of shooting that episode, I did a vlog about it, of trying to decide, my mom died. And my panic attacks got worse. Like, I was having a really rough time, and it kind of felt like a sign, and it kind of felt like my mom telling me, like, yes, you need this, do it. And so I started trying to figure out how to train her as a service dog. And I'd already trained her a bunch. You don't have to, again, as an emotional support animal, but I had trained her for public access, because at the time you could take emotional support animals on planes. You can't anymore, but at the time you could. So I wanted to train her to be okay in the airport and in public, and to be okay with, a lot of other people in case I needed to take her to events. So she had a lot of training already. But I started working with a trainer that was actually a brain that reached out from the channel, saw my vlog about wanting to train her as a service dog, and said, hey, I write books on animal training, and I have a background in this, and I used to and by the way, I also struggle with these things that you struggle with, and I also have had a service dog, and I've trained psychiatric service dogs for other people, and I specialize in small dogs. And I was just like, well, this is perfect. So I reached out back to them, and their name is Chris, and they're fantastic. They train cats as well. They can train, I think they're currently trying to train a chicken. But they've been absolutely wonderful. And I met with them once a week over Zoom. I also flew down to do some in-person training sessions. And they have helped me train Chloe to get my meds, to interrupt me if I'm in hyperfocus, to lay on, this is kind of controversial, but to lay on my lap while I'm driving, to keep my arm down so that I don't pick up my phone and text while I'm driving. To like interrupt me if I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I do this when I'm overwhelmed, and like usually that means I need out of that situation or out of that conversation. And so when she sees me do that, she'll jump up on my legs to like alert me to the fact that I'm not okay. And I'm really glad that I did it, because now when I go on trips, if I have to go give a talk or go to a convention or something, I can bring her with me on the plane, and she can stay on my lap because she is a trained service dog. Just got a dog. Found out I'm a really good dog trainer. That's awesome. I've been really good in some ways, but in other ways, like training her to stay was really, really challenging, because that and like her reactivity, like if she barked at another dog walking down the street, because I'd be walking her and I would be trying to train her, but I would get distracted, and then another dog would bark or would pass by and she would bark, and I'd be like, I just undid like 2 weeks of training. Or I would tell her to stay, and I'd get distracted and forget that I'd told her to stay. And so eventually she just learned like, okay, I don't know if she actually wants me to stay or she forgot that she told me to stay. So I'm just gonna like walk away. She does wear a service dog vest outside. Yeah, I found somebody on Instagram that makes custom patches. So she has a service dog vest, and one side it says service Daug, like DAUG, like Dachshund Pug mix, and on the other side it says I'm her cleric, and it has like a little mace. All right, let me see. Are you planning on opening YouTube memberships? I had thought about it, but we have Patreon. So if people want to support, they can support on Patreon. And that's just patreon.com/howtoadhd. And it works the same as YouTube memberships, I think, for the most part, like where you get, you can contribute $5 a month or $1 a month or like whatever you want to support our channel. But the extra benefit of Patreon is it links to Discord. So we have a Discord server that is really cool, where you can connect with people from all over the world who have ADHD or autism, different conditions, and we've got a bunch of different chat rooms in there. And Patreon has been really, really good to us. So I think we're keeping things over there for now. We might eventually start a YouTube memberships thing, but again, I'm trying to like focus my efforts this year, so not yet. Cadenza, your videos always help me so much when I watch, but I feel like because of that, it can be hard to get in a mindset where I want to watch. I'm not sure why, but it feels like it's because the info is so relevant. I feel the same, and this is one of the reasons I'm like, we need to make our content more accessible, like put it on TikTok and in articles and stuff like that. Because if I'm dealing with something currently, watching a video that's too on point about it, like, is anxiety inducing for me. And so I sometimes, if I'm struggling, I won't even go back and watch my own videos on this content, even though I know it's really good stuff and I did my homework and I did a lot of research on it and it's good advice. I don't want to watch it because it's like the emotion is too big. So for me, what I'm hoping is that translating the videos into article form will be easier, because I guess it's less emotion, right? If it's not somebody, especially me, talking at me, then it's less emotional and I can just read it, so I can get the information without it being as intense emotionally. I don't know if any of you can relate to it, but we did notice that when we're doing episodes that are on topics that are especially important for us, things like, managing money, or I don't know, there's a few things. Like, we noticed that the comments are really good, but there's not as many people watching. So people love the episode if they watched it, but fewer people are actually watching the episode. And I think that's because of that. It's validating to hear you say that, because I'm just like, okay, that's kind of what I suspected, is some of our more intense, like, this is super relevant to my life right now. Like, I don't want to. Aw, short form, nice. Okay. Oh, Sparky, you're like me. I'm ADHD, but I'm a guy, and my sister is full-blown autistic. Yeah. And I don't know if you felt like this too, but I felt like growing up, like, well, my ADHD isn't that big a deal. Like, autism, like, that's a big deal. Like, that deserves support. But like my ADHD, like, I just need to focus. Like, as if it's less valid somehow. I don't know. Khalil Gamer, I see your comment, and I think it's in here too. I just haven't gotten there yet. Also, I will say, like, the mods have been instructed, like, if people keep spamming the same thing, they'll actually take it out, because it makes it so that other people can't get their questions seen. So I do see it. Are you able to see if a user rewatches your video? Does it count twice? And then I'll go back to the other questions. We can't see individual users, like, what they're doing, but we can see patterns. So if we see that a video gets watched a lot at the beginning, and then it drops off a little bit as it goes, and then usually when I'm like, thank you, my Patreon brains, like, you see a sharp drop off because everybody's like, okay, video's over, bye. There's often, as the viewership goes down throughout the video, there's often a part where it starts to go up again and then down, which tells us that people rewatched that part. But we can't actually tell if somebody rewatched the whole video. I think it does count twice, but there's like a limit to it. Like, I know that that you can't, like, when you're a baby YouTuber, you can't just like have all your friends watch your video a bunch of times and have that count, because they know what's up. They know that happens. Yeah, but yeah, if you watch a video twice, it counts. What do you think ADHD accessibility in an app looks like? A lot of user experience research seems to be lacking cohesive thoughts about neurodiversity. So interesting you asked that. We're working on a survey, or not a survey, a rubric for what makes something ADHD friendly. Because I, at this point, am really instinctive about it. Like, I can consult with a company and immediately point out what's not going to be ADHD friendly about it, or what they could do to make it more ADHD friendly. But I don't know how to like put it into words. And so I started working with Deirdre, who's a cognitive scientist, who's volunteering on this project, and so am I. I'm like, we're not going to charge for this. We just think it should exist in the world. We're making an ADHD friendly project, or an ADHD friendly rubric, that consists of 7 points and then a bunch of, data in each of those points to kind of see if something is ADHD friendly or not. And it's something that we want to put out and then update every year as we learn more and refine it as we go. But we're trying to put out a version of it this year that people can use so that they can see before they buy a product or an app or whatever, if it's likely to be ADHD friendly or not. And I think that's really, really important. But one of the criteria that she brought to the table to include is it error tolerant? Because ADHDers make a lot of careless mistakes, AKA we got distracted or we didn't notice or whatever. And there are some products that I'm like, this is just an automatic fail. Clear Care, the solution that I used in my contacts, that is part hydrogen peroxide, and unless you read the label, you don't know not to put it in your eyes in a, straight from a regular contact case. Like, I ended up in the ER because of that. That is not error tolerant. But there are a lot of products and apps and stuff that, like, if you make a mistake, real bad things happen. And so they'll put warnings all over it. But like, I missed it because the warnings were in red, but the cap was in red. And I just thought it was part of their branding. I didn't realize, like, oh, this is something I should pay attention to. It just looked like part of their thing. And so I missed it. There are warnings all over the bottle. I still missed it. That is not error tolerant. Hey, Jess, don't know what exactly we're talking about. Just want to say thanks for your channel. You helped me a lot. Mainly the tell me you have ADHD without telling me you have ADHD. Keep it going. Nice. Yeah, we're starting to do more community focused content and more vlogs and stuff. At this point, like, when I started, there weren't a lot of people talking about ADHD on social media. I think I was the first YouTube channel that was like focused on ADHD specifically. And now there's just so many people sharing really good information, and people are so educated that people can share their stories in a really in really cool ways. Like, they get it more, like people understand their ADHD better. And so I'm starting to pull in more content from the community, which is neat. Because, yeah, wait, hang on. Xanti. Oh, Xanti. Thank you. The more, wait, I forgot what I was saying. I was excited that now I know how to pronounce Xanti. Okay. Debash mode. I was diagnosed 1 month after my 56th birthday. Wow, 2 years ago. Better late than never. And this channel has helped so much, from info to self-empathy to laughter. Thank you. Thank you. That's so cool. I love that. There's people, and Hank Green was one of them, where he's like, does it even make sense for me to get a diagnosis? He was going to put that in his episode about, when he talked about ADHD, he ran the script by me. And one of the things he was going to say at the end was like, well, but I've made it this far, not diagnosed, so it doesn't really make sense for me to get a diagnosis. And I asked him if he would consider changing that to, like, I don't know if it makes sense for me to, because the truth is, like, it's going to depend from person to person on whether or not it makes sense. But I've heard from so many people on this channel now that were diagnosed later in life that are like, this is still great because, like, now I get the support that I need, or I have the understanding and the validation of what I need, or now I'm taking meds and, like, holy crap, like, life is on easy mode now. Like, I didn't know things weren't supposed to be that hard. They were always that hard for me. I just thought, everybody else was better at doing it or whatever. So Thank you. Thanks for supporting the channel. Okay. All right, so I think the comment may have been taken out for spamming, but I do want to address like how to study. I did an episode, a 3-part episode on study tips, and the research on that is still really, really good. So I don't know, Harley, or one of the mods, if you can link the videos on how to study and like how to prepare for finals. There's also really, it's really cheesy old school how to ADHD. It's like our old branding, and there's random pictures of like puppies, because I'm like, I don't know, what does the internet watch? They like puppies, right? Like, let's put puppies in it. But the information is really solid. It's more than I can cover in just a simple answer, but the TLDR is like, studying is really challenging for people with ADHD, and there are a lot of things that we can do to make us to be more effective at it. Not only with studying, but also the note taking to help us study, and then the test taking itself. So I think that's what I covered, is how to take notes, how to study, and then how to be more effective when you actually take the test. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thank you, Harley. Till, damn, Jessica, your last words are so true. It hurts. It was also always difficult. Never knew it could be different. Yeah, I mean, an important thing to remember is just because it's our normal doesn't mean it's normal. And they're, for me at least, like taking meds, and meds don't work for everybody, right? And they're not going to be right for everybody. There's a reason why I talk about all kinds of other strategies on my channel. Meds are not the answer, the be all end all. But when I took meds for the first time, it was like putting on glasses for the first time. Like I remember not being able to see the board in class, and I remember putting on glasses and being able to focus and being like, oh, is this what it's supposed to be like? And when I took meds for the first time, it was the same thing. And one of the reasons I suggest trying stimulant meds, if you can, is it's in and out of your system really quickly. It's like drinking coffee. If it doesn't work for you, you'll know real quick, and then it'll be out of your system. And if it does, you'll know real quick. For the most part, they might start you on a low enough dose that it's not effective yet, and they have to build up once they know you don't have any side effects or whatever. But it can make such a huge difference for people. And for me, it was like, I took it, and like an hour later, when it kicked in, like I could focus, and all of the effort I was already putting in suddenly mattered, suddenly like was effective. I could choose what to focus on for the most part. Like, did I also still focus on things that were absolutely not related to the thing I actually needed to be working on? Yeah, I realized real quick, I have to be careful what I'm working on when my meds kick in, because I will be working on that for a while. And sometimes that was like, I still had trouble prioritizing. I still had trouble with executive function. I still had trouble with a lot of things, but it did help a lot. It took life off of ultra hard mode, at least. Okay. I know. I'm sorry I'm not getting to all the questions. I'm trying. I know it's so frustrating when you're like, I asked a question and I'm being patient and it's not getting done. So let me do a lightning round. I'm going to try and get through a bunch of questions real quick. Okay, let me see. Okay, what do you think are the big hurdles for time management for people with ADHD? We actually have a series on the channel about that too, with Eric Tivers. I think that's also a 3-part series, but one of the big ones is something that sometimes referred to by the researchers as time blindness. We actually can't tell how much time has passed, and it can feel like it's been a really short period of time when it's actually been hours, or it can feel like it's been hours when it's only been a short period of time. And it's related to our emotions too, and to our circadian rhythm. So it's also related to, like, a lot of people with ADHD have oh God, I'm blanking on the term for it, but where you end up going to sleep later than usual and waking up later than usual, delayed sleep phase syndrome, where your melatonin doesn't kick in as early as it is supposed to, and so your circadian rhythm is off. And because of that, it messes with our sense of time. And if we also are having trouble sleeping and like waking up at different times all the time, that messes with our sense of time too, our circadian rhythm as well. So a lot of times we just don't know how long things take because we don't have a great sense of how much time has passed. And we also tend to be very optimistic sometimes, and think that something's going to take a lot less time than it'll actually take because we're not taking into account things going wrong. We're just like, it'll take 5 minutes if everything goes perfectly. Like if I know that I live 15 minutes away from the coffee shop where I'm meeting somebody, I can leave 15 minutes before I have to meet them. And it's like, well, okay, but like I also have to get to the car. I also have to like adjust, you know, the mirrors or put on music or whatever. I also have to find a parking spot. I also have to like get in. So it's not going to take 15 minutes, but like I forget, like we forget to account for all of the steps, because our brains don't effectively break things down into steps the way that would be nice if they would, and that neurotypical people seem to be able to do. So yeah, it's not accounting for things going wrong. It's forgetting that there are steps involved, and it's the actual like not having a great sense of how much time has passed and how long things actually take. And we have an episode about the wall of awful, where some things that are really, really emotionally hot for us, like that are really anxiety inducing, it feels like they're going to take hours when maybe they would only actually take 5 minutes. Whereas like something where it's like, oh, like I'm excited to do this thing, it'll only take me 5 minutes, 3 hours later. We just don't have a great sense of time. Okay, right, action round. Did you have a vision when you started this channel? What helps you keep on track for a long-term goal? My first long-term goal ever, and I don't want it to fall by the wayside. Yeah, I think the big thing is splitting it up into smaller goals. So the vision when I started the channel, it was ridiculous. I'm like, it was ridiculous. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna figure out everything that's wrong with my brain, figure out how to fix it, and then go back to like what I was trying to do before, only successful this time. Also, like because I made it public, I'll have 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. Like I thought. My goals were ridiculous, but what helped was setting the smaller goals that were more doable, which was like, yeah, I have this big vision, but what I'm going to do to achieve that is every week I'm going to post a video. And so having shorter term goals to help you toward your long-term goal is really helpful. And this is a lesson I keep having to learn. I told my therapist, I'm like, I'm going to be so happy when at the end of this year I've written a book. I don't know how it's going to happen, but like I'll celebrate at the end of the year when I've written a book. And she's like, how about we break that down a bit? I'm like, that's a real good idea. She's like, do you have to wait to celebrate until you finish the entire book? I'm like, probably not. She's like, how about we break it down into chunks? I was like, I did that on my schedule. And she's like, how about we celebrate that? Because ADHDers need more salient rewards and we respond really well to rewards. A really good way to help us, it's really an accessibility issue. To help us sustain effort toward long-term goals, we have to have shorter term goals that also have their own reward. So that's it. What's my favorite thing about ADHD? Divergent thinking and enthusiasm. Actually, that's 2 favorite things. But I love that ADHD brains go all over the place and come up with so many interesting ideas and find new ways to think about things and new ways to put this thing together with this thing to create something new. And like going into the Discord on through Patreon, like it's such an idea factory. Like I'm just like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And like in 5 minutes, there's just so many cool ideas about it. And then that combined with how enthusiastic everybody is to be able to like come up with these new ideas, it's just really fun. It's really, really fun. Brainstorming with ADHD is awesome. When you're adding a habit into your routine, do you just think adding one at a time, and how long before you add another one? I don't have the patience to do that. I know that technically that's how you're supposed to do it, but I'm not patient enough for that. And also like when I need a routine, I'm like, I needed a routine now. And like, if I add one thing at a time, like it feels like things start slowly falling apart. Like it can't be like, and I'm only going to wash my face because then what am I going to not brush my teeth for like the next week? So like, I don't know how to realistically do the one thing at a time, but I write it down. Frankly, like that's what I ended up doing. I ended up writing out what my morning routine is step by step and what my evening routine is step by step. And then all I have to remember to do is in the morning, open the thing, do the steps. In the evening, open the thing, do the steps. And actually what I ended up doing was in the morning, it's alarms. I have an alarm for take meds. I have an alarm for go wash face and meditate. I have an alarm for work out. I have an alarm for go eat breakfast. Like I have alarms for everything. And then at night, I don't care what time I do it. So I just have a list. I'm like, okay, these are the things that I'm doing. And it's ridiculous how often I have to check it. Like it really is. But having a list of what it is that I'm doing so that all I have to remember is to set my alarms for what I'm doing in the morning and to check my list at night. So it's one thing at a time, yeah, but batching it somehow so that it can be more than one thing. But only one thing that you have to remember to do, I think, is probably the key. What's the hardest thing about having ADHD for you? For me personally, my organizational challenges are so bad, you guys, so bad that I spent the entire last year trying to explain to the assistant that I hired to help me get organized. Like I realized how much time I was losing to, especially digital organization. I was just like, I don't know, I had an idea and I put it somewhere. I don't know where it is. So I hired somebody on specifically to help me get organized. And I spent like a whole year trying to explain to her how my brain worked and what I was having trouble with or whatever. And finally she ended up, I screen shared one day and like a year later and she watched me work and she was horrified at like how I was trying to work and was like, oh God, like I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of like, I didn't realize how bad it was. So she was trying to give me like, you know, oh, okay, like you struggle with organization, like let's give you organizational skills. She didn't realize like how badly I was struggling, so that I like these organizational skills were still out of my reach. Like I didn't have the foundational skills to like to even do the organizational things that I needed to be doing. And so yeah, it's pretty bad. Like I'm frustrated with myself at how hard organization for me it is for me and how long I have to spend on getting organized and staying organized, and like how it feels like I almost have to treat myself like a child sometimes, where I'm just like, okay, and now we're going to put this in the blue bin. And I'm just like, this is, I'm supposed to be smart and I'm fast and like my brain can do all kinds of cool things. And like I have 1 million subscribers on my YouTube channel. I shouldn't have to do this. And the truth is I do, because we have different skill sets, you know, and this is really true for people who are twice exceptional. You can be really, really gifted and really, really smart and really talented at all these things and still have really a lot of trouble with the most basic shit. I get so bored of organizing myself. Yeah. Yeah. What's your opinion about ADHD being invisible in society? I'm really excited that it's less invisible now. I think for a while, like I used to think that I was the only person who had ADHD that I knew. And now people are coming out of the woodwork. These people that I thought were successful, and I was like, well, clearly they're successful because they don't struggle with what I struggle with. They were masking. They weren't letting me see it. They were ashamed of it and trying to hide it. But they struggled with this stuff too. And now they're like, oh my God, your channel has been so helpful. And now that I understand my ADHD, now I can accomplish this and this and this. And I was struggling with it. And I was like, I had no idea you were struggling because you hid it so well. And I think that's it. I think that when ADHD is invisible in society, it's because it is seen as a moral defect, or it is seen as like you're, you know, again, a bad employee or a bad friend if you do X or whatever. And so we try to hide it and we mask our struggles. And I think that the more that we are able to talk about it openly and normalize it, the better, because it's like, it's almost like society's been built as if ADHD and autistic brains don't exist. And now that we're like, hi, but we do, and we're like tired of trying to pretend that we don't, I think we can build a world that's more neurodivergent friendly, because we can build a world that accounts for the fact that people are neurodivergent. We can stop pretending that we all have the same brain, the same standard issue brain, and can all do the same things if we just try hard enough. Like, and what I've really realized the last year is it's a lot easier to build an environment that accommodates and accounts for neurodiversity than it is for somebody to not be neurodiverse. How would you go around having ADHD with 3 other people with ADHD in your household? Oh man, we would have so many lists and systems, and like systems to remind us what the systems are. Honestly, my first priority personally would be to make the entire house as ADHD friendly as possible. So having everything at the point of performance. And if there's a charger that multiple people use, making sure that there's a charger at each place that charger gets used, so that people don't have to like grab it and move it somewhere else, and now somebody else sits down and now there's no charger there. Having a launch pad by the door where it's like, okay, whatever anybody needs before they leave goes here. So that you can get the backpacks ready, the whatever needs to go, like the coats and the masks and the everything, like by the door. And I would put labels on everything too, like even light switches, like this is what this goes to, this is the garbage disposal. Like I would use a label maker, like, yeah. And also I would personally have a rule that nobody moves each other's stuff, unless there's like a specific bin labeled for it, where it's like, okay, if you have to move my stuff, it's in this bin. That way, if I'm like, where is my thing? Like, cause as soon as somebody moves my stuff, I'm like, I can't find it now. It might even be put in a great place that's super organized, but I can't find it because like, it's not where I expected it to be. So that, and then, yeah, it's, if anybody else has like, yeah, I have 2 kids with ADHD who've done like 90% of that. Yeah. And also I would remember that just because they all have ADHD doesn't mean that their ADHD is all the same, or they're not dealing with other things. Because I've made that mistake too of like, well, I can do it and I have ADHD and you have ADHD. Why can't you do this? And it's like, well, my brain's different. Will your videos be translated in French? Because your videos help me a lot. Like to recommend it to those I know who struggle as much as I did, but they're not fluent in English. So yeah, I actually have to touch base with my operations director. We have an operations director now, who met with Mike, who's one of the mods who's been helping out with translations, and see what's going on with that. But yeah, one of our goals this year is to make the videos more accessible, and one of the ways that we're doing that is to make sure that we set up a system and keep that system going of having ways to translate it in different languages. So if you're interested in that, Harley, can you tell them who to email if they're interested in translating? You can drop a message. Okay. How can teachers with ADHD use their diagnosis as an asset? One of the most important things I think is disclosing. Like, I have had teachers, like the class that I just took, the teacher of the class, I was worried that it wouldn't be ADHD friendly and that I'd be judged for all the things I'm used to being judged for in classes. And one of the first things she said is like that we're going to be really accommodating of everybody who has different types of struggles and different types of backgrounds and stuff. And one of the things that I use is fidgets, and I'm probably going to be using a fidget under this desk while I'm teaching this class. And just her saying that normalized it and made me feel like, okay, it's okay that I'm here. It's okay that I exist. It made me feel seen and it made me feel supported. Just her saying that she didn't, I don't even think she had said she had ADHD. She was just like, this is something that I do to help me stay focused, and I'm going to be doing it. And it gave me permission to do it too, and made me feel immediately so relaxed. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is like actually just talking about it and talking about what you do that helps you. That's super helpful. I've been getting so many ads for my ADHD treatment membership type things like Cerebral, Inflow, Done. Have you seen these things? Do you have any thoughts on them? So Cerebral, I think, is specifically for anxiety and depression. I don't know how they handle ADHD yet. Inflow, actually, I consulted with them. I'm not sure what they've done since. I have to look at it again. But when they were first getting started, they came to me and I gave them a bunch of feedback. So I'm optimistic. They seemed interested in it. I don't know how it is yet. I need to take a look. Done is another one that I'm looking into. Done is specifically for ADHD treatment. And then I know that Patrick, I don't know the name of it, but our own research consultant is consulting on one of these apps too. So my thought is things like this are really promising because they're seeing a need and they're trying to fill it, which is that we're not getting the support we need. And I think that over the next couple of years, we're going to see them compete and hopefully be better. I'm happy to, like, I've already said, like, I'm happy to consult with them. And I've so far just done consulting work for free where I'm like, hi, you're trying to serve this community. Let me help you do that because I want this community to be served effectively. But I don't know those specifically yet. Ahead is one that I have looked into and that I've talked to them about, and I really love where their heart is at. But right now they have a limitation that is why I haven't recommended them on the channel yet, which is if somebody's dealing with suicidal ideation, they can't treat them over teletherapy or telehealth because of the potential, liability issues and somebody maybe needing a higher level of care or in-person care if they are dealing with suicidal ideation a lot. But I'm just like, there's probably a lot of people in this community that are dealing with that. So if that's the case, like I can't recommend it yet, but they are working on maybe changing that policy, which I hope they do, because I think that, I think that shouldn't be a barrier to treatment. I'm trying to figure out like, okay, who's providing the least amount of barriers to treatment so that people aren't putting their energy into things that are not going to work out for them. So I'm extremely picky about the stuff that I recommend. Extremely picky. And one of the reasons I can do that is because of the support of like donations like this and donations from people on Patreon, where I can say no to brands and sponsors and stuff like that. When I find apps and treatment, ADHD friendly treatment stuff that I really can get behind, I will share it on the channel. But until then, I will just consult with them behind the scenes and help them try and get there. Okay, Jessica says I had a terrible experience with Done and don't recommend it. Okay, really good to know. I haven't looked into that one yet. I'd actually be really curious about what your experience was. Because to me, I'm like, okay, if you're saying that's a high bar, if you're saying you're making treatment ADHD friendly, you have to make sure that it is actually ADHD friendly for me to talk about it. Because that's, I mean, if it was like, oh, this is one place you can get treatment among many others, okay, but like if you're saying you're serving this community, I need to see that you're serving this community and you're doing it effectively. Yeah, I'm I'm kind of harsh. I'm kind of protective of this community. I'm just like, you're not going to make money off this community unless you're actually doing a good job serving it. Is kind of my perspective on that. Thank you for not recommending them. Okay, good to know. Okay. All right. Any words of wisdom for high schoolers with ADHD who struggle with academics? That's really broad. If you can be more specific, I'm happy to answer it. But to give you an answer, I'm curious with why. Like, what is the struggle? Is it that you're bored? Is it that it's too challenging? Is it that you've signed up for too much? For me in high school, I took on way too much. I was doing way too many extracurricular activities, and I was also doing a part-time job, and I had a boyfriend, and I was trying to make friends, and I just had so much going on that like my grades started to suffer. And that combined with like, well, it didn't feel like it actually mattered because like I didn't apply to colleges in time or universities in time to get in. So like, why did it matter? I was going to go to a community college anyway. So it was a combination of like, I didn't have the motivation and I had way too much going on. But it's probably different for everybody. I'd be curious why you're struggling, but if you're not already getting treatment for ADHD, that would be the first place that I would go. Because school without treatment is real challenging. All right, let's see. How do I talk to my parents about ADHD and wanting meds or meds not working or needing help in general? I do have an episode on this. I don't know if Harley can find it and post it. How to talk to your parents if you think you have ADHD kind of thing. It depends. So some parents are going to be a little more open to it than others, but the short answer is persistently. The first conversation you have with your parents about ADHD may not go well. Parents are going to feel all kinds of things, like maybe because ADHD is genetic, they might be like, no, you don't have ADHD. Like, this is normal. What you're struggling with is normal. I struggled with it, and may not realize that they may also have undiagnosed ADHD. If they don't believe in ADHD, that's a different story. If they are super supportive of ADHD, then it's a different conversation. But generally speaking, yeah, the information that I provided in that video would probably be the most useful. But yeah, the big thing that I got from talking to people after that video came out and seeing how it went for them was that it had to be a kind of a consistent conversation, because if parents hear it once, it's easy for them to dismiss it, and if they never hear it again, they're like, I guess it wasn't a thing. But if you're like consistently like, hey, I'm struggling, hey, I need help, hey, I think this might be what's going on, maybe share some information with them, maybe show them some videos, give them some time to process it, and then come back. And then there were some people who said that their parents were like, look, I just don't think you have ADHD. A good thing that seemed to help some people was to say, that might be true, and I would feel really better. I would feel a lot better if we could just get it checked out. Okay, have you found any good sources about ADHD and traumatic brain injury? No, that is not something I've actually looked into, and I should. Let me write that down. I do know, I mean, I've just heard things about how, because people in our community sometimes have traumatic brain injuries, and a lot of times that can look like ADHD, but I don't know about the combination of it. And I just, that's something that I need to research. I don't really know much about it. I do know they had to rule it out for me when I got diagnosed. That was one of the things I checked for, is to see if I'd had a brain injury. And ADHD used to be called, like, one of the terms for it used to be minimal brain damage. Thankfully, they understand, like, that's not what it is. But I suspect that it's because of that similarity to like how it can present. Okay. If anybody has good sources on it, feel free to share. Other than medication, what other methods do you use to motivate you with tasks, like writing scripts, videos? Salient rewards, big one. And I think the Fabulous app teaches you to do this, which is based on behavioral science. Even if it's something as small as like clapping, like you did something good, like just clap for yourself, or like be like, yay, like just do something to like reinforce. So the way that dopamine works, and dopamine seems to be involved with ADHD in terms of like our system doesn't work the same as neurotypical systems. We tend to have lower levels of dopamine. Our brains tend to be chronically understimulated. And the reason that's a problem is dopamine helps us remember, hey, doing this thing led to this good outcome, right? Like, hey, whatever you did, like that felt good. Remember that. Dopamine helps with learning, and dopamine levels also help with executive function. So if our dopamine levels in our brain are good, our executive function also works better. What was the question I was trying to answer? I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Hang on. I think it got crossed off because I was in the middle of answering. Sorry. I had a really good answer for it. Does anybody know what question I was answering? Wait, it's on screen. It's on the screen. Yep. That's an accommodation. Right. Other than medication, what other methods? Wow, I just completely, guys, like my medication, seriously, I'm not on the right meds for me right now, and I can tell. And it's frustrating for me that this is how the system works, that I have to be on meds that don't work as well for me just to prove to my insurance that, no, I really do need the stuff that doesn't have a generic. I have no idea what I was just saying. Salient rewards, yes. Oh my God. We need salient rewards. Again, carrot and the stick. Like, we don't respond well to the stick. We don't respond as well to negative consequences, and it takes bigger and bigger consequences to even like motivate us at all. So the rewards are what we really want to focus on. And it's silly, but it works, and it's an accommodation thing. Just like, you know, with somebody in a wheelchair is going to need a ramp to get into the place instead of going up the stairs. We need more immediate salient rewards. We need things like getting to cross something off a list or a sticker chart, or, honestly, I get a treat at the end of the day. If I've had a successful day, like, I get a treat. I get like a handful of, I don't know, Thin Mint Girl Scout cookies, or covered pretzel things, or like I get a little bit of ice cream, or I get treats. I get, if I had a hard week, like, I'll go get like go get a massage or something. Like, I reward myself for finishing things, and like I get excited with my team. I'm just like, guys, we did a good job. That's one of the big ways. And then also making sure that I'm not asking myself to stay motivated towards something that's going to be a really long ways off. Breaking everything down into shorter steps, and to where it feels doable, and it feels like the reward is worth it. It feels like, okay, I got enough out of this, that like I got the dopamine because I'm experiencing something pleasurable, right? Like, I pair the thing, right? So sometimes it's even during the thing. So if I'm writing a script, I get to eat animal crackers or whatever, something that I like, so that I get the dopamine that gets released when my brain realizes something pleasurable is happening, and my dopamine makes the association, hey, like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it's working out for us. Now I remember that, so now I have a really positive association with working, because I get to do something pleasurable while I work, or I get to do something pleasurable immediately after I work. That helps my motivation a lot. I don't try to force my brain to do things it doesn't want to do, because I've noticed that just backfires, because then I'm miserable, and now I'm associating this task with misery instead of something pleasurable. And so I have a rule for myself personally, that if my brain doesn't want to do the thing, it doesn't have to, but I need to do something to get my brain to want to do the thing. So whatever is getting in my way, if I'm overwhelmed, like clearing out some clutter, or if I'm bored, finding a way to make it more stimulating. Like, I still have to do my work, but I'm not going to just force myself to do it, because then I'm creating a negative association instead of a positive one, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to do like 10 more minutes, and boring by, I respect your boundaries on that. If you're not getting anything out of this, like, yeah, go do other things. So I'm going to do like 10 more minutes. And then I will try to answer more questions in the comments. So like, once the video is posted, if you have other questions, I will keep answering questions, because I know it's frustrating to like sit through a whole stream and not have your question answered. So I will continue to try and answer questions if they're in the comments below after the stream. But I will do some more. Harley, do you wanna highlight any? There's so many good ones. Ooh, this is a good one. Do you feel mentally younger than your peers? Do people talk to you like you're a child? Yeah, so one of the things with ADHD is there's a neurodevelopmental delay. And so in some ways, we actually are younger than our peers in terms of executive function. Like, our prefrontal cortex develops more slowly. And so somebody who's like 12 really has the regulation capabilities of somebody who's like 9. And so because of that, we often are talked down to as if we're kids. And like, because of our executive function challenges, even once our brain fully matures, which takes longer in people with ADHD than it does for neurotypical brains, neurotypical brains mature finally at like the age 25-ish, which is why that's when you can start renting a car, because you can start making better decisions at that point. But for people with ADHD, it's around, like, don't tell the car companies, around like 28 is usually when we finish maturing. But then also, the things that are associated with being an adult are executive function related. And even once our brains finish maturing, we often are still struggling with executive function. And so that can make people treat us like we're a child, not realizing this is like, it's a disability. Like, it's, I mean, not always like ADHD can or cannot be, but in some ways my ADHD is absolutely a disability. And I am I do have the organizational skills of like a 5-year-old sometimes. So yeah, I do feel mentally younger than my peers a lot of the time, and I am treated like I'm young. And in my case, at least, like I also look young. And a lot of people with ADHD, I've noticed, kind of look younger and act younger than their age. And I think that's why. It's because of the neurodevelopmental delay, and because the executive function, even once it matures, is still not what most people think of as being an adult, which is like, you know, being on time and being organized and sending out your Christmas cards every year and all of these things that, you know, and we still have kind of this childlike enthusiasm and wonder that we get to preserve, which is kind of the cool part of it. Were you ever feeling like you weren't up to the responsibility of owning a dog? Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. The nice thing is, like, at least with my dogs, they've helped me take care of them. They will communicate. Like, okay, I don't do well with plants, but like the whole advice of like, oh, get a plant, and if you can take care of a plant, and you know, then you're ready for a dog. No, because the plant won't be like, hey, yo, I need water. But a dog will. Like, my dog will actually pick up her water dish and bring it to me if I forget to fill it. If I forgot to take her outside, she has bells by the door that she will go ring to say like, hey, I need to go outside. She reminds me to take care of her, and in reminding me to take care of her, it also incidentally reminds me to take care of myself. And so I've seen parents sometimes make the argument of like, you can't have a dog, like you can't even take care of yourself. But a dog really can help you take care of yourself, because they will communicate their needs, for at least in my experience. And it's still a huge responsibility. You still have to have the time to do it. But in terms of like what I was actually worried about, which is forgetting, she's really good about reminding me. I'm not sure if you've already covered this, but do you have any advice accepting your ADHD diagnosis? I accepted my ADHD diagnosis because I was like, oh, cool, like I'm getting to join a cool club, when I was 12, because my aunt was diagnosed first. And so I didn't have a problem with the ADHD diagnosis itself personally. But what I did have a hard time accepting was the ways in which it's affected me. I think I got really good the last few years of being like, I have ADHD, and like I accept that all of these things are involved in my ADHD, and I accept that like I'm going to have to do things differently to accomplish the same things, and that's okay. But what I've personally had the hardest time accepting is that I'm not going to be able to overcome all of those challenges, that I am still going to struggle with some things, no matter how, you know, well my meds work, they wear off. And no matter how many strategies I have, I will forget to use them. I will still have ADHD. And that's honestly been hard, because when I started the channel, I think my goal was to overcome it. Like, my goal was to like figure out what's wrong with me and like figure out what to do about it. And over the course of doing that, like I met this community, and I realized how wonderful people with ADHD could be too, and all these strengths that were involved that I didn't know about. And I started to have a really good relationship with my ADHD, but I still felt the need to overcome it. And I still felt like, well, okay, but the end goal is like I get to keep all the good parts of ADHD, and like I get to figure out how to like not have any of the struggles anymore because I've learned all the strategies. And that's been a really hard pill to swallow, but it's done me so much good to just accept that there are limitations I'm always going to have. There are things that I'm always going to struggle with, and that that's okay. And that my value doesn't lie in my ability to be normal or neurotypical or overcome all of the challenges that I face. I have value just as a human, and these tools and strategies are not, they're not to make me acceptable as a human. They're to help me and empower me to achieve the things that I want to achieve, so that I can live a life in line with my values. And that's the latest part of my journey, and I'm going to be talking about it in my book, is recognizing that it's okay to struggle. It's okay to have a disability. It's okay to have ADHD. It's okay to have autism. And what makes it feel like it's not okay is the world is not okay with it. But I think there's enough of us that we can change that we can say, no, there needs to be room for us too. So I'm going to end that there because that just got real emotional for me. But I will answer more questions after the stream. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, get some lunch. But yeah, I think if there's anything I'm going to do with my ADHD army of over 1 million subscribers, it's to encourage them to talk about it and to make sure that we are asking for the space that we deserve to exist, because we do. We shouldn't have to completely overcome or hide everything about us that's different, because there's beauty in diversity, there's value in diversity, and it's unfair of the world to ask us for all of the good and the ingenuity and the entrepreneurship and the enthusiasm without any of the struggles. Like, it's not how it works, and it shouldn't have to work that way. Like, there should be room for us, and the world should be more accommodating for us, and we can bend the world to fit us, or at least to include us. So that's my goal. Thank you, guys. We'll see how it goes, but maybe next year we'll be at 2 million, and I'll have a book finished and ready to go. In the meantime, like, keep an eye on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to hear updates on how the book is going. I'll be sharing bits and pieces, I'm sure, and it's gonna be a really cool journey. I think this will take things to the next level for us this year. So thank you for your support and for being here on this journey. Bye, Rains.